I think the best way to get into this discussion is for me to do all the stupid scientific stuff and all the numbers research, and you to come at it from a guy, you're just paying attention, you're just watching, you know how they've played, you know how things have gone, you know what their status is moving forward, you know who they've got coming up, and you've been paying attention all year. Just without diving into a bunch of metrics and numbers, where do you think they sit right now? Like, how do you think they are being presented to the committee, and what's their opportunity here moving forward to make that better or worse?
Yeah, they're looking good in the net right now, so that's something that box you already have checked, so you don't have to worry about digging a hole for that, trying to climb those rankings. But I think right now they're looking like a 10 or 11 seed right now. When you just look at just across the country and all the similar teams with similar resumes as them, especially in conference play, I think that's the biggest thing. In this team, they could have possibly been a 4 or 3 seed the way they were playing early on in the season, and now it's looking like if you lose out here, you're possibly on the verge of being on the bubble and possibly not making it. So I would say that's probably where they are without getting too advanced in it. But I'm sure you know a little more than me.
Well, I think that's fair, and I think that's probably what most people would think. You're sitting there. We know that they're 19-8. We know that they're 7-7 in league play, which isn't very good. We also know that their non-conference schedule was not exactly star-studded. It turns out that the win over Wake Forest is a little better than we probably gave it credit for. And then the rest of your non-Power 5 teams that you were beating up on have kind of held up their end of the bargain and won a lot of games. So here's as clearly as I can spell this out. They're not on the bubble by any national basketball outlet. Nobody considers them that. Now, I can't tell you what the selection committee will think. This is subjective. But I can go by what the national outlets say, and they're not on the bubble. Let's run through some of the metrics as to where they sit right now. As you mentioned, the net's fine. It's 16. That's very good. And it's very likely not going to fall anywhere out of the top 25. You're not going to fall at all from losing to Kentucky on the road. I mean, you might drop a spot. You might not move any. You may not drop more than a spot or two. You go to Arkansas and lose. Now, you lose to Missouri at home. That may be a little bit of a different story. But right now, your net is pretty safe at 16, which is very strong. Quadrant 1, you're 5-5. Is that great? No. Is it awful? No, it's not. Quad 2, you are 4-2. You have a solid record there. Those are your that's the meat of your schedule. And then what you do on the back end? Did you stub your toe at all? Well, you're 5-1 against Quadrant 3, and you're 5-0 against Quadrant 4. So really, you lost Ole Miss, but in summation, you haven't really stubbed your toe. You haven't been good in conference play, 7-7. We know that. However, this harkens back to this what we talk about every single November and December when he puts this schedule together. It's not sexy. You're not playing Duke or Gonzaga or Kansas or Michigan State or UCLA. You're not. But it looks good on paper. And the fact is that some of these teams that lost some non-conference games or some of these teams that have been iffy in conference play, LSU metrically looks better than all of them, because you loaded up on quad 2s and 3s in the non-conference and took care of your business. And then you played your throwaway, your quad 4s, your Northwestern States, and your ULMs and all that kind of stuff. And everybody's got those, but you look good. And so as I look at what they've got left, they've got at Kentucky, which is quad 1, home Missouri, quad 3, at Arkansas, quad 1, home Alabama, quad 1. 3 quad 1s and a quad 3 is what's left. Here's where they sit right now, and this is as clearly as I can spell it out. ESPN updated bracketology has them as a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. CBS has them as a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. And the bracket matrix, which takes all the available bracketologies, has LSU as the number 1 6 seed of the 4, the best of the 4. So, how close are they to the bubble? First of all, does that surprise you to hear 6 and 7?
Yeah, that definitely surprises me. I thought, especially taking some of these losses you've taken in the SEC to non-quad 1 teams, I thought it would really hurt their resume. But you see the work they put in the beginning of the season is coming dividends at this point, because it's giving you a little cushion to have some of these losses that you've had late in the season and to really still be above a 10 seed. I thought there would be no way with the amount of SEC losses that they've had, they would be higher than anything other than 9 or 10. But that's a great spot to be in right now.
And that's subjective. It may be wrong, but it's all we have to go off of because we're not in the room with them. So let me, to paint the picture clearly, tell you where LSU is relative to the teams that people think are on the bubble right now. ESPN says that one of the teams that's going to get the last 4 byes. So they're not even going to Dayton. This is going to be on the 11 line or the 12 line, not going to the first 4. And I don't even count that as being in the tournament. If you got to play Tuesday in Dayton, you're not in the tournament by my estimation. Surely you can play your way through it, but I hate the first 4. I don't like it. It ought to be field of 64, whatever. Not the point of the discussion. This is in the top 64 of the field. They've got North Carolina in there. Let me put North Carolina's resume up next to LSU's, and this will give you a metric as to how close LSU is to the bubble. North Carolina's net is 42. Again, LSU's is 16. That is not close. LSU in quad 1 is 5-5, as I said. North Carolina's 1-7. 1 quad 1 win, 7 losses. Quad 2, they are 4-0. LSU is 4-2, so comparable. North Carolina's is better, but comparable. Quad 3, North Carolina is 11-0. LSU is 5-1. And then in quad 4, North Carolina is 4-1. They have a quad 4 loss, and you've played the same amount of games. LSU is 5-0. So North Carolina's net's not good. Their meat of their wins are in quad 3 and 4, and they've been atrocious against quad 1. LSU's net is good. In quad 1, they've held their own, 5-5, and they don't have a bunch of stuff in the back end. So to me, LSU's resume is significantly better than that of North Carolina's, they say, is on the bubble. Now, there's 3 weeks to shake this thing out, and things can change. But as I lay those numbers out to you, does that change your perspective from 8 minutes ago when we started this discussion?
Yeah, it's so subjective. I think you get a little bit of that in football where it's like, okay, who's the 4th or 5th best team in the country? But for the most part, you pretty much know you lose too many games, you're out of it. There's going to be so many teams with similar resumes really getting in the thick of this thing, and especially, in the money time, now most of the teams have 4 or 5 games left. You're going to see a lot of teams with similar resumes to LSU, but like you said, you look at the net, you look at some of the teams that they played, some of the quad 1 victories that they do have. I think that's going to really, pay dividends when it's time for the selection committee to put this bracket together, because we're going to keep talking about that Kentucky and that Tennessee win. I think that those are huge to have, because I think without those two, you definitely find yourself in a position where you're not in the tournament right now.
And then one more, just to do this exercise and run it through, and we'll continue this in the next segment and kind of talk about where we see things stand. But I'll go to CBS, totally different outlet from ESPN, but they do a pretty good job with this. Jerry Palm's their lead guy over there. They've got Florida as one of the last 4 teams in the NCAA tournament, and I mean in, not going to Dayton. One of the last 4 teams in. Florida's net's 50. LSU's is 16. Florida in quad 1 is 2-7. LSU is 5-5. Quad 2, they're 3-2. LSU's 4-2. That's better. And the majority of Florida's wins, 7 of them, are in quad 4, and they also have a quad 4 loss. LSU doesn't. Again, the resumes are not all that comparable, plus LSU went to Florida and won. So as you look at this now, it feels terrible because they've played so poorly through the meat of this conference schedule in the middle. You got your last 3 and 4, and they don't look great. And this conversation changes literally daily, and that's the beauty of this sport. It's fun to kind of chop it up and start doing some comparisons. But as we sit here right now, LSU is objectively in a better spot than the 2 teams I just told you that are on the bubble. Do I think if they seeded it right now, LSU would get a 6? I don't. I think it'd probably be closer to 7, and I think 8 is probably more likely. But the fact is, they're not really that close to the 11 line right now. Now, Saturday, you go lose to Kentucky, come back home and play Missouri and get beat on your home floor. We'll change the discussion on Monday in a hurry.
Yeah.
But right now, they got a better chance of getting a 5 seed than getting left out of the tournament, in my estimation. That's as clear as I can say it.
Yeah, I mean, you mess around and you split these last 4 games. I think you're definitely looking at that, because now you're adding another quad 1, possibly another 2 quad 1 victories to your resume. So that could be huge. And you've already beat this Kentucky team. I know they weren't at full health. Seems like they still got a little injury stuff that they're dealing with. So you should have the confidence that you can at least play that team close, and who knows what can happen down the stretch. And obviously Alabama, that's going to be a tough one at home. We know how streaky they can be, but these are games where you just don't expect them to get blown off the floor. If you can keep these games close, I know it's going to be some tough basketball games down the stretch, but A lot of people in the Bayou 4 chat, they're saying 1-3 for the Tigers to finish this season. I think if they can split these two, they'll give themselves definitely a favorable position once you kind of look at the advanced numbers of where they actually are as far as this tournament goes.
And Alabama is an interesting case study with LSU to compare because Alabama went out and they scheduled Houston, who's a top 15 team. They scheduled Gonzaga, who's a top 5 team, number 1 right now, and they won those games. But then you came back and stubbed your toe against Davidson. You lost to an iffy Memphis team. You lost to Iona, and then you hurt yourself badly. And I can't necessarily pinpoint how bad in the net it hurts you to lose to Georgia on the road or to go to Missouri and lose. I'm not 100% certain exactly how that works because you couldn't do that math. But the fact of the matter is, as you look at Alabama, LSU's net sits there at 16, and Alabama, with those great wins, is significantly behind them. They're at 22, 5 spots behind them.
Mm-hmm.
It probably behooves you to just go out there and handle your business against Louisiana Tech, Lipscomb, Liberty, Ohio, those teams. It's not as much fun. I'm totally with you. I'd rather play Gonzaga too, but the fact of the matter is that the proof's in the pudding here. LSU's conference record has been pretty putrid, and they're 16th in the net because they beat up on a bunch of 20-win mid-majors. Will's figured it out, and again, not fun, but it's reality. So that's the situation we're in.
Yeah, it's about, look, I'm sure Coach Wade figured that out, especially getting into this SEC schedule. It's about working smarter, not harder. You can beat yourself up in the beginning of the season, jumping all these, preseason tournament, opening weekend tournaments on the weekend and play some of these ranked opponents. But in the big picture, you give yourself a lot bigger cushion to fall on in the end of the season when you play some of those opponents early on. So they're a lot better than I thought. Hopefully they can, win a couple of these games left, because if not, it's going to get real shaky for them.